Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Rose Writes and I write and narrate Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction. Big shout out to ChocoLuck Chipz for allowing me to use their amazing artwork in my thumbnail. If you haven't checked them out yet, their link will be in the description box below. Now then, please enjoy the final part of Adrienette April, even though it is the last day of May. Adrienette April, Day 30. Wedding. Marinette stared at the stranger in the mirror, her hair wrapped in a difficult braid, the creation lined with baby's breath. A few strands hung in delicate waves framing her face. Her skin looked as pale and smooth as porcelain, a subtle shade of pink peeking through her complexion. Her maid of honor had spent at least an hour alone on her eye makeup, tears welling up in the corners now. "Here, girl," Alia said, handing her best friend a tissue. "Don't mess up my hard work." She giggled, zipping Marinette's lace-embellished dress the rest of the way up. Marinette stood as Alia smoothed her train, pulling it out, the dress stretching at least a meter on the hardwood floor. A knock reverberated around the room, sounding hollow at the same time as it bounced across the metal doorframe. "You look beautiful," the mother of the bride cooed. She entered the dressing room, her husband Tom in tow. Sabine wiped a tear from her eye, careful not to mess up her eyeliner. Seeing her mother cry nearly sent Marinette over the edge, but if she did start crying, Alia might kill her. Marinette smiled sincerely, reaching out to her mother, taking her small hands. "I love you, Maman." She wrapped her mother in an embrace, then felt two large arms grip both of them, lifting their feet from the ground. Tom, now ugly weeping, said, "You look like a princess, just like your mother." Tom blubbered between sobs. "Papa," Marinette sighed out, still dangling in his arms. She laughed as he set her down gently. Marinette staggered a bit like Bambi walking for the first time. Curse these heels. At this point, she wondered if it'd be better to go with bare feet rather than potentially embarrassing herself. Her parents bowed with a small wave, exiting the room, leaving Marinette and Alia to finish their final preparations. "How are you feeling?" Alia questioned. But this simple question bore so much weight. How did she really feel? Anxious, honestly, but why? In only an hour she'd be marrying her best friend, and oh, how she loved him. She had dreamt of this moment since he held that umbrella to her, his emerald eyes shining. A perfect smile settled on his face, looking at her with kindness. Simply miraculous in every way. Her Pinterest wedding board had been created since then also. It's never too early to be prepared, right? Everything would be perfect. Hopefully. Okay, probably not, but that's the joy of it. With her legendary clumsiness, nothing would ever run smoothly. But she had come to terms with that years ago. Marinette sucked in some air, her diaphragm rising, feeling the pressure against the tightness of her dress. She breathed out slowly, releasing a bit of anxiety. "I'm nervous." She plopped down, still careful not to wrinkle her pristine gown. "What if he leaves me at the altar, or—" "I'm gonna stop you right there. We've known Adrien for over a decade, and if I'm sure about anything, it's his feelings for you." Alia took her best friend's trembling hand, attempting to ease her thoughts. Marinette nodded, still breathing deeply. A head popped through the door, a huge smile displayed on his face, crowding his features. "You guys about ready?" "Nino." Marinette stared at him. Huh, so that's what the top of his head looked like. She had never seen it before. For some reason she had assumed he was bald, or almost bald. He wore the same red cap. The same hat he wore in high school. It had definitely seen better days. Nino glanced at his wife, who glanced at Marinette. Yeah, let's go. Is everyone in place upstairs?" "Yeah, of course. I've got everything covered." "Except..." Nino bit his lip, avoiding eye contact with the bride. Except? Except for what? Like he had everything except for the groom? Was Adrien getting cold feet? Did he have a getaway car prepared to drive halfway across Paris so he didn't make the biggest mistake of his life? Marinette locked arms with her maid of honor as she swayed to prevent fainting. Marinette shared a frantic look with Alia but was too stunned to speak. In the few seconds that passed, a million thoughts raced through her mind, all of them equally horrible. Except, Alia said threateningly. Except that something happened and Pastor Bro isn't coming. He preemptively flanked, waiting for the bride's wrath, but it never came. She stared, unblinking at the wall, eyes watering from the strain. Nino grabbed her shoulders, pulling her attention to him. Don't worry, dude, I've got it. I'm an ordained minister, you know. Marinette's eyes flickered to Alia, then back to Nino. Did she know that? If she did, she didn't remember. Nino as a minister? The thought was enough to make her almost smile, forgetting the impending doom she had just felt. Almost. You're, what? How? Since when? You're a DJ. Marinette attempted and failed to wrap her head around this new information. Nino worked exclusively as a DJ, now as his sole source of income, primarily parties, occasionally for A-list celebrities. But a minister? What on earth? Yep, I officiate the wedding and then we get down, Nino said, doing some pop lock and drop move, followed by a classic, the floss. Marinette continued staring at him as he grooved to the music in his head. Alia shook her head, then checked her phone before placing it back in her dress pocket. Looks like it'll have to do. We're running out of time, girl. Marinette took one more breath in and out before making the long trek upstairs. She could feel her heart beating in her throat with every step, her heels landing on the marble ringing in her ears. Her bridesmaids lined up outside the door, hugging and gushing over her look. Alia straightened her train, stretching it out behind her. Her red kwami zoomed up to her in a blur, her big blue eyes appearing glossy with tears. Are you ready, Marinette? Tiki said, carrying a tiny basket of white and silver flower petals. Marinette cuddled the small kwami against her cheek. With you by my side? Always. Wow. 12 years. 12 years she had been Ladybug with Tiki supporting her every step of the way. She thought back to when she almost ditched her Miraculous. What a different life that would have been. She couldn't begin to fathom it, but Marinette was grateful she took on this responsibility. We've been through so much together, and I... Tiki's tiny voice quivered, echoing her sentiments, ringing in a higher pitch than normal. I know, Tiki. I love you too. Now don't cry or you're gonna make me... A sob broke from Marinette's throat. Alia ushered Marinette to the back of the line, simultaneously drying the tears that had started emerging in her eyes. Bombastic organ music started playing from the sanctuary. Pachelbel's canon in D major. Albeit simple, it remained one of Marinette's favorite pieces. As beautiful as it was, no one played it quite as beautifully as Adrien. Many of their lazy days consisted of Adrien playing the piano, smells of Marinette's famous cookie recipe wafting into the room. It was those simple moments that made her love Adrien the most. Almost time. The bride took in a deep breath, holding it for a few seconds before releasing it in a steady stream. The rustic wooden door swung open, revealing the sanctuary all dressed in pure white lilies, Marinette's favorite flower, with accents of orange on each pew, Adrien's favorite color. Marinette peered around her wedding party to find a glowing Adrien standing at the front, his best man standing where the priest would. Marinette felt her heart clench as she stared at her betrothed, hands crossed in front of his body, an eternal smile plastered on his handsome face. All of the anxiety in Marinette's body dissipated as she stared at Adrien's face, her happy place. She felt safe and comforted. What did she even have to worry about? Nothing. Nothing at all. Life felt blissful. Perfect. The wedding party began processing following Tiki, the flower kwami. Marinette seamlessly floated down the aisle, feeling all eyes on her as she walked in time to the music. The walk to the altar never felt so excruciatingly long. Her friends walked gracefully, draped in beautiful orange fabric, peeling off to stand at the front of the cathedral. Julika, Rose, followed by Alia, all carrying a bouquet of a mixture of lilies and bright orange tiger lilies. This was going well, or so she thought. She continued strutting down the aisle, taking slightly large steps. Not a smart move, considering she was a klutz in normal shoes, but in heels. A tragedy was inevitable. Marinette's 4-inch disasters caught the fabric at the end of the aisle as she thought she was almost safe. She flew a few feet forward, landing in Adrien's arms. He was always prepared to catch his princess when she fell, which was often. She knew she should have taken them off when she had the chance. "Hey, princess, fancy meeting you here," he whispered just loud enough that only she could hear. "I've always known how to make an entrance." She giggled softly as Adrien helped her to her clumsy feet. Marinette finally kicked off her heels to avoid any more mishaps. "Dearly beloved," Nino recited, projecting to the large audience, grabbing their attention. He sounded so formal. Who would have imagined that Nino would be their minister and actually take this seriously? "We are gathered here to celebrate the joining of my best bro and Marinette." They joined hands, staring into each other's eyes as Nino recited verbatim, with a few modifications. A script he probably obtained from the online minister school. "You look beautiful," Adrien whispered. She squeezed his hands. "Thanks, you do too." He chuckled under his breath, returning her squeeze. Nino put the script down on a podium that stood behind him. Oh no, Nino was going off script? As in more improv than he was already performing? A pit formed in her stomach. He had so many embarrassing stories he could tell. What would it be? The time she had a bit too much to drink and confessed her feelings for Adrien? After they were already dating? Or the one about the time Adrien took her to the carnival on a date, and she threw up on his new shoes after the teacup ride spun her stomach in circles? I need to tell everyone about these two people. People fall in love all the time. But I have never seen any two people more meant for each other than Adrien and Marinette. You know, I heard about Adrien's legendary crush on Ladybug every day for years. And, well, everyone knew Marinette was in love with my best bro. Marinette's face turned shades of pink as the attendees chuckled. And then we found out that these knuckleheads were our two masked heroes, and suddenly everything made sense. These two puzzle pieces could finally come together and fit together perfectly. I can hardly imagine them apart. This is the way it's meant to be, and I am so happy for the both of you to create a beautiful life together." He ended his speech, looking a little misty. Adrien wrapped him in a big bro hug, Marinette mouthing, "Thank you," trying not to cry herself. Nino was never a man of many words, usually letting his music and dance moves do the talking in these kinds of social events. Nino cleared his throat and wiped his eyes with a coat sleeve before saying, "Now then, do you, bro, take your lady bro to be your lawfully wedded wife?" This broke the tearful tension she felt after that moving speech. Marinette couldn't stop her giggles. Lady bro. She had never been called a lady bro before and didn't think she would at her wedding, but here they were. Adrien smiled at Marinette, eyes never drifting away. "Of course. for the rest of my life. All right! Nino slapped Adrien on the back with a bit too much force, pushing his friend forward a bit. Now, Marinette, do you take my bro as your lawfully wedded husband? Marinette started. Oh, wait, Nino interrupted. One more thing. Do you take my bro as your lawfully wedded husband and promise to feed his best man all the croissants he wants? He side-eyed the bride and groom, pretending that was part of the script. Marinette let out another stream of giggles. Of course, Nino. But most importantly, I do. Adrien, I love you more than anything. Adrien wrapped her in a tight embrace, dipping her down into a passionate kiss. Nino jumped around his station a bit, throwing his minister script high in the air. When he had settled down, he said, You may, continue kissing the bride. Marinette reluctantly pulled away after a few moments, greeted with the sound of erupting applause from each corner of the cathedral. The masses stood to their feet, still clapping as the newly married couple turned to face them. She had done it, with only minor acts of clumsiness. And now she was married to the love of her life. Marinette clutched Adrien's arms in hers, the beads of her bodice poking into his skin. She stared out at the friendly faces, most of which she recognized. Was that a smile on Gabriel Agreste's face? It was hard to tell, but it might have been. Or at least his best attempt at a smile. Please join me in welcoming Mr. and Mrs. Dupeng Chang Agreste. Hearing their last names smushed together filled her with pride, sending tears to her eyes. The wedding was over now. She could afford to cry, right? The pair exited together the way they came, a parade of Kwamis holding rice or flower petals to throw at the bride and groom. This wasn't quite organized, but she wanted all of her little friends to have a part in their special day. This is what a perfect day looked like. A day filled with love, surrounded by her favorite people, tripping and all. It couldn't have been more perfect. One day down, forever to go. Thank you so much! If you enjoyed this, don't forget to give this video a big like and subscribe for more things like this. I have so many stories that I'm working on, some that I kind of let go and they seem neglected, so I am getting to work on those, as well as a bunch of new stuff as well. So if you enjoyed this, I hope you stick around. And as always, stay miraculous!